There were 3 forks on the dinner table. That was the first thing that made no sense. I had set the table myself. 2 plates, 2 wine glasses, the regular fork and knife arrangement we always used when we pretended our marriage still had pulse. But now, as I stood in the kitchen doorway with oven mitts still on, staring at the 3rd fork sitting perfectly beside a 3rd plate, I knew something was off. She wasn't expecting me home that night. That much was obvious. I wasn't supposed to be there. She thought I'd be in Chicago until Friday, stuck at a logistics convention listening to guys named Kurt talk about palette optimization. But the last panel got canceled. I didn't tell her. I thought I'd surprise her. Instead, I surprised myself. The food was still steaming. Garlic bread. Her favorite. The expensive balsamic vinegar we couldn't really afford. 2 glasses of red poured, 1 half empty. And then, the 3rd glass. It sat untouched. At first, I told myself it was for a friend. Maybe her sister. Maybe a neighbor. But I knew better. The room smelled like cologne that wasn't mine. And someone had left a leather jacket, definitely not hers, thrown over the back of my reading chair. I bought that chair in Vermont. She never let me keep it in the living room. Said it was too frumpy. And now her guest was lounging in it. I didn't hear footsteps upstairs. I didn't hear whispering. Just silence. Thick, waiting silence. So I didn't go up. I just sat at the table, still wearing my coat, and looked at the meal she'd made for him. That's when I saw the envelope. It wasn't hidden. It was propped up against the salt shaker like a greeting card. Pale cream, formal. My name in her handwriting across the front. I opened it slowly. My hands were dry, shaking just a little. I already knew what it was. Before I unfolded the first page, I knew. Divorce papers. No explanation. No accusations. Just logistics. The date was typed. Her signature already there. The only thing missing was mine. The thing is, I didn't get angry. I got embarrassed. It was like being fired from a job I didn't know I was failing. Like being handed a pink slip with a smile. The kind of smile she gave when she passed off a sarcastic compliment at dinner parties. So I did what I always do. I mumbled to myself. Figures. Of course. On a Tuesday. And then I laughed. Not a strong laugh. A weak, wheezy little laugh that made my shoulders twitch. I took out my phone. Opened the hidden folder. The one she didn't know I had. Screenshots. GPS pings. Messages forwarded from a friend at her gym. Her yoga sessions were real all right. Except they never included yoga. I attached 2 photos. One of her and her trainer at that hotel upstate. One of the divorce papers. Then I typed. She cooked dinner. Poured wine. Left these for me. Wait till your lover sees what else I've got. And I hit send. Upstairs, I heard a door creak. But I didn't move. I just sat in the chair she hated. In front of the plate she made for someone else. And I waited. Not for her. Not for him. But for what came next. The footsteps came slow. Not hurried. Not guilty. Just casual. Like he'd been here before. Like he knew where the creaky step was and avoided it. I didn't even look up. I just sat there, staring at the wine glass in front of me, wondering if she poured that one for him or for herself. Didn't matter. My name was still on the lease. My picture was still on the mantel. My toothbrush still sat beside hers. But the man walking down those stairs wore aftershave I didn't recognize and confidence that didn't belong in my house. He turned the corner and stopped cold when he saw me sitting at the table. No words. Just surprise. Like I was the one intruding. He was taller than me. Fitter. Had that stupid stubble that looked like it was shaped by a personal barber. He wore my wife's favorite color, navy blue, and his shirt was halfway unbuttoned. I noticed a faint smudge of her lipstick near his collar. I stared at it like it was some kind of Rorschach test. All I saw was a smear of everything I ignored for too long. Lyndon, he said finally, trying to sound calm, maybe even respectful, like he was hoping to de-escalate something that hadn't exploded yet. You know my name? I replied flatly. Cute. He cleared his throat and tried again. I didn't know you were. Supposed to be in Chicago? Yeah, I was. A long silence. He looked at the table. 3 plates. 3 forks. 3 glasses. 1 lie. I guess you got the papers, he said, nodding toward the envelope beside me. I looked him dead in the eye and smiled, small, crooked, exhausted. Yeah, real thoughtful. Wrapped up like a gift. Did she tell you she likes presentation? She didn't want it to be messy, he said, almost apologetically. You know, clean break. Dignity. I laughed. Loud this time. Enough to make him flinch. Dignity? You're wearing my cologne. He blinked. Looked down. Oh, I thought it was yours? No. She bought that for me last Father's Day. Must have gotten confused. Happens when you move into someone else's life. He opened his mouth like he wanted to explain something. Like I was supposed to listen. Like I hadn't been slowly dissolving in silence for the last 3 years while they had side street lunches and hotel lobby lies. But before he could speak, I cut him off. She's still upstairs? He hesitated. She's changing. Of course. Changing. Transforming. Molting out of her wife's skin and slipping into whatever version of herself she was when I wasn't around. I used to love watching her get ready. Now I couldn't tell if the woman upstairs was the same person I married or just a stranger in my old clothes. I stood slowly and walked over to the counter, picked up the bottle of wine, and poured myself the glass she hadn't touched. I didn't even offer him any. Then I looked back at him. You know she lied to both of us, right? He frowned. What are you talking about? She told you I was controlling, distant, obsessed with work, that I stopped caring, stopped listening, that she tried everything before this. Am I close? His jaw tightened. I nodded. Yeah. She said the same things about you. To her sister, her friends, to me, even. That you were needy, clingy, jealous. She liked that for a while. But women like her don't stay. They orbit. And they burn whatever they touch. He didn't reply. He just shifted his weight, uncomfortable now. Like the truth had started scratching under his skin. I'm not here to win her back, I said quietly. That version of her doesn't exist anymore. Maybe never did. I'm just here to return the favor. He furrowed his brow. What does that mean? I held up my phone, showed him the message, the screenshots, the location tags, the timestamps. Then I turned the screen and tapped once. Audio started playing. Her voice, laughing. He still thinks I go to yoga. Bless him. Then another clip. I could give him divorce papers in a cereal box, and he'd probably say thank you. I watched his face change. 1,000 emotions flickering across it. Shock, then confusion, then the heavy drop of realization. I sent those clips to someone, I said. Someone you know. His eyes narrowed. Who? Your wife. He froze. I nodded. Yeah. She didn't know about this, did she? Neither did your kids, I imagine. Cute family photos, by the way. Loved the Christmas card. His mouth opened, closed. Then he looked toward the stairs. A door creaked again. And then we both heard it. Her voice upstairs, calling his name like nothing was wrong. And maybe for her, nothing was. But for him, everything just detonated. I didn't look at him when she called his name from upstairs. I wanted to see how he'd react without an audience. How a man responds when the mask slips. And sure enough, he flinched. Not visibly, not like in a movie, but in a microscopic way. His fingers twitched. His eye darted toward the staircase for half a second, and then back to me, like he was calculating whether he still had a way out. There wasn't one. I sipped the wine. It was sour. Cheap. Not even the kind she liked. I wondered if she bought it for him. If this whole dinner had been part of a fantasy she was building in her head. Domestic bliss. A clean slate. A man who didn't burn eggs and get migraines from stress and forget anniversaries after getting laid off during the pandemic. I was still holding the divorce papers, and now they had a smudge of wine on them. I liked that. I liked that they weren't clean anymore. The sound of her heels on the stairs snapped the silence in half. He backed away instinctively, like he didn't want her to see him standing so close to me, like he thought maybe he could still talk his way out of this. But I stayed exactly where I was, next to the table she had set, the envelope she had signed, and the wreckage she didn't expect to find so early in the evening. She turned the corner, wearing a maroon silk dress I hadn't seen before. Something sleek, low-cut, paired with earrings I bought her for our 5th anniversary, the one she claimed she lost in a hotel laundry bag. When her eyes landed on me, her entire body paused mid-step. She didn't scream. She didn't gasp. She just blinked like her brain had momentarily frozen, trying to realign her understanding of space and time. You're home, she said flatly. I am, I replied, calm as ever. Thanks for the wine. Her eyes flicked to him, then to the envelope in my hand. Then, to the third plate. There it was. The crack in her expression. Barely there, but enough. I didn't expect you until tomorrow. I noticed. She swallowed hard. Lyndon, we can talk about this. Sure, I said, pulling out a chair and sitting. We can talk about a lot of things. Want to start with what lies you fed him, or should we talk about what I just sent to his wife? Her face drained of color. She looked at him. He looked away. She stepped forward. What did you send her? I raised my phone. Clips. Texts. Photos. You've been sloppy. Maybe you got too comfortable. You didn't, she snapped. Oh, I did, I said, smiling just enough for her to know it wasn't empty. And she replied, by the way. Lovely woman. Polite. Very upset. I told her I'd give you two some space, but she said she might stop by. Clarissa's eyes went wide. For the first time in a long time, she didn't have a script. She was spinning. I stood again, slowly, folding the papers and slipping them back into the envelope. I tucked it into the inside pocket of my coat. You think this is about revenge, I continued. It's not. I'm not here to beg, or fight, or throw your things into the yard like a bad country song. I'm here because you tried to erase me. Quietly, like I was a mistake to be deleted. She said nothing. But I'm not disappearing. Not quietly. Not conveniently. You wanted a clean exit, like a breakup in a movie, one final scene and fade to black. But you didn't write the ending. She crossed her arms, her voice regaining some steel. So what do you want, Lyndon? You want to ruin my life? I laughed again. That same quiet, bitter laugh from before. No, I said. You already did that for both of us. A knock at the door interrupted her reply. 3 slow, hard knocks. She turned pale. I looked toward the hallway. That's probably her. No, she whispered. Or maybe it's your mom. She still thinks we're trying for a baby, doesn't she? Don't do this. I walked toward the door. You did this. I'm just giving it a proper ending. I reached for the handle, watching both of their faces tighten with anticipation. But before I opened it, I looked back and said one last thing. By the way, the man in those hotel photos with you? That's not him. Her mouth fell open. Then I opened the door. Clarissa didn't breathe for a full 2 seconds after I opened the door. Her hands clenched at her sides, nails digging into her palms, body frozen like someone had hit the pause button. She was expecting the woman, of course, his wife. That's who I made her think I messaged. But I never said the name. I never said it was her. That was her assumption, which made the moment I opened the door even more satisfying. The man standing on the porch wasn't tall. He wasn't muscular. He didn't carry himself like someone who'd just discovered his wife was having an affair. No, this man looked like someone who had already known. Someone who had been waiting. Clarissa blinked, confused. The man took a step forward, adjusting the cuff of his coat with slow precision. His eyes locked on her like she owed him something. Do you know who this is? I asked her, keeping my tone flat. She glanced at him, hesitated, and then turned back to me. No, I've never seen him before. Interesting, I said, stepping aside so the man could enter. He walked in without a word, carrying a manila folder under his arm, thicker than the one she'd gifted me earlier that day. His shoes echoed against the hardwood floor, the sound oddly surgical in its rhythm. He stopped in front of her lover and nodded once. Mr. Keller, he said. Her lover, Brian, I think his name was, shifted uncomfortably. Wait, I've seen you before. You were at the... Yes, the man said. Twice. Once at the gym. Once outside the Sheraton. You don't notice people unless they make noise. What the hell is this? Clarissa snapped, finally regaining her voice. I poured another glass of wine and leaned against the kitchen counter, watching the three of them like a theater audience watching a twisted play unfold. No one in that room had read the same script. The man turned to her. I'm a private investigator. Retained by your husband 3 months ago. I've documented every meeting, call, location ping, bank charge, and hotel visit. I also have GPS data showing you and Mr. Keller checked into the Dayspring Hotel in Green Hollow during your supposed women's retreat. Her mouth parted slightly, but no words came. He continued, undeterred. Mr. Keller, your name appears on 3 rental logs, 2 hotel bills, and at least 5 cash transfers from Ms. Maynard's account, one of which was processed through her husband's shared business card. That's financial fraud, by the way. Brian looked like someone had knocked the air out of him. She told me it was her own money. I didn't know. You never do, I said. That's what makes you so useful. The PI opened the folder, laid the photos out on the table one by one. I didn't need to see them again. I'd already lived with them. Still, watching Clarissa's face as each one slid across the oak tabletop was worth every dollar I'd paid to have them captured. There she was, laughing, arms around him, entering hotel rooms at midnight, exiting condos at dawn, sitting across from him in restaurants we used to call ours. Why? She finally said, voice shaking, barely above a whisper. Why go this far? I looked at her, the woman I once loved so deeply it hurt. And I gave her the only honest answer I had left. Because you wanted out. But you didn't want to look like the villain. You wanted to bury me under papers and walk away spotless. You wanted to skip the part where you answer for anything. I'm just putting your name back on the story you wrote. She stepped back like the air had gotten thinner. The PI closed the folder and turned to me. She's been served. As of tonight, you have full legal grounds to countersue. Given the financial overlap and marital fraud, you may also be able to recoup. I don't care about the money. I cut in. I just wanted her to feel it. Just once. The room was silent for a moment. Then Clarissa turned on her heel and stormed up the stairs. Her steps were fast, erratic. Not the measured stride she always carried when she was in control. No, this was panic. Brian sat down heavily at the edge of the couch, staring at the photos like they might vanish if he blinked long enough. I watched him for a moment, then said, "Still think she was planning a future with you?" He didn't answer. He just buried his face in his hands. The PI handed me the folder and nodded. "I'll follow up with the attorney in the morning." "Thank you," I said. After he left, I sat alone at the table. Clarissa didn't come back down. The third fork was still there, polished, untouched, now absurd in its symbolism. That's when I finally opened the second envelope, the one she'd left in her coat pocket. And what I found inside made everything so much worse than I ever imagined. The second envelope was thinner. No bow, no dramatic placement, just wedged inside the inner pocket of her long tan coat. The same coat she wore on fake weekend trips with her book club, the same coat I used to hang by the door for her like a doting fool. I found it while cleaning up. Not on purpose. I wasn't looking for anything. Honestly, I think I just wanted something to do with my hands before I did something reckless. But the moment I felt the rigid shape of the envelope beneath the lining, my heart clenched. Instinct took over. The kind of instinct that tells you when the air in a room is changed. When something irreversible is about to happen. I pulled it out carefully. No name on it. No label. Inside were 2 folded sheets of paper and 1 printed photo. At first, I thought it was another legal document. Maybe something for her lawyer. A backup copy of the divorce petition. But as I unfolded the first page, my eyes stopped on a name I hadn't seen in over 7 years. Evelyn Margaret Maynard. My daughter. Our daughter. Stillborn. I hadn't heard Clarissa say Evelyn's name in years. After the loss, she shut down completely. Didn't want to talk about it. Wouldn't go to counseling. Wouldn't let me hold her when she cried. It was as if she erased that chapter from her mind entirely. And I respected it. Or rather, I accepted it. Because grief is weird, and I figured she needed to deal with it in her own way. But this wasn't grief. This was a hospital bill. A recent one. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I skimmed the top of the form 3 times before realizing what it really was. A prenatal care invoice. Issued just 6 weeks ago. Addressed to her maiden name. The second page was worse. An ultrasound report. First trimester. Confirmed fetal heartbeat. Estimated due date. Private OBGYN clinic located 2 towns over. No mention of my name. No insurance info connected to our plan. She'd gone out of her way to keep it separate. And then there was the photo. A grainy, black and white printout. Tiny arms. Curled spine. The ghost of a head. I knew what I was looking at. I'd seen one just like it nearly a decade ago. But this time, it wasn't ours. This time, it wasn't mine. I just sat there, frozen, holding this thing in my hands that shattered whatever pieces of stability I had left. For a full minute, I didn't move. Didn't blink. Couldn't even think. Then the anger came. Not loud. Not explosive. Just heavy. Thick. Boiling under the skin like hot tar. She was pregnant. And it wasn't mine. And the only reason she hadn't told me yet was because she was still figuring out how to spin it. This wasn't just betrayal. It was replacement. She wasn't just done with me. She was rebooting her life entirely. New man. New baby. New lies. I went upstairs. Not fast. Just with purpose. I found her in the bathroom, wiping makeup off her face in slow, mechanical circles, like the night had become too heavy for her to pretend anymore. She saw me in the mirror and paused. I held the envelope up without a word and set it on the sink counter beside her. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. Her eyes dropped. And for the first time that evening, she looked small. Not because I'd caught her. Not because she was ashamed. But because the truth had arrived faster than she was prepared to package it. How long were you going to hide it? I asked, voice flat. Or were you just going to let the due date do the talking? She didn't answer. So who's the father? I pressed. Her voice came out cracked. I don't know. I closed my eyes. That answer somehow stung worse than a name would have. I don't know. Like it was a math equation she got bored solving halfway through. I sat on the edge of the bathtub and looked at her, really looked at her. And for a brief moment, I wondered who she even was. Was the woman I married ever real? Or had I been falling for the projection of someone too scared to exist honestly? She finally spoke. I was going to tell you eventually. I scoffed. When? During the custody hearing for Buster? Or after you changed your last name again? She winced. Don't do this, Lyndon. No, I snapped. You don't get to say that. You don't get to burn the house down and then complain about the heat. She turned away, gripping the edge of the sink like she might collapse if she let go. For a moment, I thought she was going to cry. But Clarissa never cried when it mattered. She cried at movies, at commercials, but not when she set real fire to people's lives. I just wanted a clean break, she said softly. You got one, I replied. Just not the kind you planned. Then I stood, walked out, and left her alone with her own reflection. Back downstairs, Brian was gone. So was the third fork. By morning, the house felt like a museum of someone else's marriage. The air was stale, rooms too quiet. Her perfume still hung in the bathroom like the echo of a lie. And everywhere I looked, there were pieces of her. Shoes by the back door, lipstick stains on the coffee mug I never used, a scarf on the banister, still carrying the faint scent of smoke and another man's cologne. But the one thing missing? Her. She was gone. I don't know when exactly she left. Sometime after I walked out of the bathroom, after I sat on the staircase for half an hour in silence, after I heard drawers opening upstairs and a suitcase unzipping. She never said goodbye. Not that I expected her to. For Clarissa, closure was always optional. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt like the weight was finally off my chest. Instead, I stood in the kitchen in the same clothes I wore the night before, staring at the empty plate from that ruined dinner. One of the forks was missing, still missing. She probably grabbed it by accident in her rush to escape. Or maybe she took it on purpose, a symbolic theft of the final piece of our shared life. Who knows? Clarissa always loved details when they hurt. But what mattered now wasn't the fork or even the envelope. It was the backup drive I found under her side of the bed. I had gone upstairs to strip the sheets, part cleansing ritual, part habit. And as I lifted the mattress corner to tug off the fitted sheet, something plastic shifted in the shadows below. A small, black USB drive tucked behind the frame, taped to the wooden slat beneath her pillow. Hidden. Deliberately. She never trusted the cloud. Said too many leaks, too many risks. Ironic, considering her lifestyle. I peeled it off and plugged it into my laptop downstairs. No password. She must have thought it was secure enough being invisible. It held over 300 files. Some were spreadsheets, names, dates, transactions. Some were PDFs of messages. But the folders told the real story. One was titled Plan A. Another was Exit Options. And a third, buried deep and heavily compressed, was simply named BRI. I opened that one first. Inside were screenshots, not of texts with Brian, but of his wife, her social media, her work schedule, her family photos, even pictures of her car, parked outside a daycare I didn't recognize. Clarissa had been watching her, not out of jealousy, not guilt. It was more like reconnaissance, like she was preparing for a future confrontation, building a psychological map of the woman she was going to destroy if things didn't go according to plan. That's when I realized something horrible. Clarissa never expected to end up with Brian. She never loved him. He was a tool, an insurance policy, a decoy. She was mapping the lives of everyone around her so that no matter which path she walked away on, she had leverage waiting. She wasn't just trying to erase me. She was preparing to control every outcome. Even after leaving, I scrolled through Plan A. It outlined a financial split that involved me agreeing to terms before she filed. If I signed early, she'd sweeten the offer with cash from an anonymous source. Likely Brian. Or worse, someone else entirely. Plan A had timelines, meeting locations, even scripts. I recognized phrases she'd said to me word for word in the column labeled suggested talking points. The betrayal wasn't just romantic anymore. It was strategic. This wasn't heartbreak. It was warfare. I sat there for a long time. Longer than I'd ever admit. Not because I didn't know what to do next, but because I finally understood why she handed me the divorce papers like a gift. It wasn't about love or closure or even justice. It was about control. But control can only last as long as the truth stays buried. And Clarissa, she didn't know what I was going to do with everything I'd just found. She had always been 5 steps ahead. Until now. I called a contact. Not a friend. Not someone who'd ask questions. An old favor. Someone who owed me from back when I still worked the finance side of military contracting. I gave him 2 names. Clarissa Maynard and Brian Keller. He didn't ask why. He just said, "All right. Want eyes or dirt?" I answered without thinking. Both. Because if she wanted to rebuild her life from scratch, I was going to make sure she did it with the full weight of her choices crushing every lie she told along the way. 3 days passed without a word from her. Not a text. Not an email. Not even a venom-laced voicemail like she used to leave after our fights. Clarissa was gone. Physically, yes, but also tactically. Which told me one thing very clearly. She wasn't hiding. She was waiting. There's a difference. Hiding is panic. Waiting is strategy. And Clarissa never panicked. She staged silence like an artist working with negative space, letting the absence speak louder than any confrontation ever could. But I wasn't idle either. The contact I called, his name doesn't matter, had already delivered. He sent me a folder. Encrypted, timed link, set to expire in 48 hours. Inside were photos, phone records, 2 background reports. One was Brian's, mostly boring. An affair here, a terminated contract there. No surprise. But the second, it was Clarissa's. Not the version I married. Not the LinkedIn profile that claimed she was once a marketing director for a skincare company that never existed. Not the woman who told me her parents retired in Oregon. No, this was the real one. Real maiden name, Clarissa Page Atwell. Real hometown, Flagstaff, Arizona. And real kicker? A sealed court record from 2011 tied to a restraining order, filed by a woman named Naomi Atwell. Her sister. That name had never come up once in 10 years of marriage. I dug further. The sealed record was linked to something vague: coercion, impersonation, falsified identity in personal matters. No jail time. Just a sealed outcome. But sealed doesn't mean forgotten. Not to the right people. I stared at the screen for a long time. Because the woman I married never just lied about who she was. She'd spent her entire life creating versions of herself. Versions she could abandon the moment they stopped serving her. Naomi Atwell filed that restraining order after Clarissa allegedly convinced Naomi's fiancé that she was dying of a rare illness, just to pull him away. It worked for a while, until Naomi caught her forging medical documents. The fiancé left. Naomi cut ties. Clarissa moved to Seattle a year later and changed her story. New job, new identity, new persona. And that's where she met me. But this was no longer just about betrayal. This was pattern. Clarissa didn't leave relationships. She rewrote them, erased the man, claimed victimhood, reinvented herself as the one who had endured, never the one who detonated. That explained the envelope, the perfect timing, the fork, and it also explained the backup drive. She hadn't forgotten it. She left it on purpose, because she knew I'd find it. She counted on it. And in doing so, she gave me the illusion of control, like I was unearthing a secret weapon that would let me burn her world down. But Clarissa didn't leave weapons lying around unless she could use them later. I realized it as I sat in the dark, cross-checking documents at 1:12 a.m., eyes bloodshot, heart pounding. My phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of me in the living room, taken from outside the window. No caption, no sender, just proof. She was watching me now. I jumped up, rushed to the front window. Nothing. No car. No movement. Just shadows and the wind brushing dead leaves across the pavement like whispers I couldn't translate. Then the phone buzzed again. Another message. This one with text. "You're not the only one with leverage, Lyndon. Careful where you aim it." I froze. That wasn't a threat. It was a warning. And suddenly, I understood. She didn't leave because she was cornered. She left because the next move required distance. Clarissa wasn't finished. She was escalating. And whatever came next wasn't going to be a legal battle. It was going to be personal. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a second. I just sat in the dark with the photo of myself glowing on my phone screen, her message hovering like a trap I couldn't see yet. Every hour that passed made it worse. Every rustle outside sounded like her. Every ping from the furnace felt like footsteps. It wasn't fear exactly. It was anticipation. The kind that coils deep in your gut when you know you've lit a fuse, but don't know how long it is. But by morning, I realized something. I wasn't scared of her anymore. I was tired. Not weak. Not broken. Just done with the game. Clarissa had spent her whole life playing chess with people who didn't know they were on the board. She didn't destroy them with fire. She wore them down, quietly, surgically, until they started asking themselves if they were the problem. I had almost fallen for it. Almost. But not this time. So instead of preparing another counterattack, I got dressed. Shaved. Made myself an actual breakfast. Not burnt eggs. Real breakfast. Something I hadn't done in months. And then, I drove. Not to a lawyer. Not to the PI. Not even to Brian's wife, who had texted again asking for updates. I left my phone in the glove box and just drove. Out of town, out of noise, out of reach. I ended up in the place Clarissa and I once visited during the first year of our marriage. A little lakeside trail tucked behind a forestry station. I don't even know how I remembered it. But I found it again, like muscle memory pulling me somewhere safer than logic ever could. And I sat on a bench overlooking the water for 3 full hours. I didn't cry. I didn't talk to myself. I just existed. And in that silence, I came to terms with something that should have been obvious from the start. Winning wasn't the goal. Walking away with my peace intact was. I had already won the second I chose not to become her. The second I didn't chase her down to humiliate her. The second I realized that revenge, no matter how precise, still keeps you chained to the person who hurt you. Clarissa wanted me angry. She wanted chaos, because that's where she thrived. But calm, stillness, indifference, that was something she didn't know how to fight. So I let go. I went home. I packed what mattered. Old photos, my father's watch, the signed first edition of the book my mother gave me before she passed. I didn't torch the place. I didn't post online. I didn't even leave her a note. I just left. Moved to a city where no one knew me. Got a job that didn't require a suit or a fake smile. Bought a quiet little place near the water and learned how to do absolutely nothing on Sundays. And one morning, months later, I got a letter. No return address. Handwritten. Just 5 words. You weren't supposed to win. I smiled. Because I did. Not by exposing her. Not by destroying her. But by walking out of the fire without letting it touch me. By rebuilding something she couldn't predict. Myself.